Hello and welcome to the Untranslatable Podcast, or perhaps for our episode today, I should say, Hallo und herzlich willkommen, ahoy. I'm trying to remember how I say welcome in Czech now. Maybe Czech isn't the best example for code switching, but today we are covering code switching, and it should be a very exciting episode. For those of you who aren't aware of what code switching is, it is the ability to switch between different languages, which I sadly did not do such a great example of between the Czech introduction, but that's all right. And we'll be talking more about code switching later on this episode. We're very excited to bring you episode 59. Hard to believe we're 59 episodes in, and it feels really great. We're very excited. And without further ado, I would like to introduce my fellow co-host and my buddy Jared. What's going on, Jared?
Hello. I've been thinking we need... damn it. I wanted to do a British accent for like the first minute, but I was like, this is not going to sustain. Hello. I was trying... I was going to do this whole thing about how we need to reach a broader audience. So I thought maybe our American accents are too harsh, so I'm going to adopt the British accent for our podcast. But as I started, I was like, my British accent's not that good.
And my British accent somehow always will go from British to Australian really quick.
Mine
I don't
usually
know
goes
why.
to Jamaican.
Yes, that's awesome.
Hello, man.
That's great.
And I wanted to first also mention code switching is more than between languages. It's also between
Very true.
cultures and just situations, I would say. Adjusting how one carries oneself. But first, before we get into any of that, let's get into some laid-back vibes and follow us on Twitter. Sorry, Chad gave me some of those hang loose fingers, and it made me giggle. Our Twitter is Untranslatable1, the number 1. Our Instagram is Untranslatable Podcast, or you can email us, untranslatablepodcast@gmail.com. Tell us about situations that you have to code switch once you listen to the episode and figure out what code switching is. Or tell us some untranslatables, which are, idioms, sayings, expressions, proverbs, things that your grandma always warns you about. That don't really make any sense, but you know exactly what she's talking about. Or you can spread a little love and give us up 5-star reviews and whatnot. I was thinking today as I was peeing that whenever I'm around like people that are my friends, they always or not always, but oftentimes some of them will mention that they listen, and I feel like they sometimes do it to make me like feel good. And all it does is just make me very embarrassed, and I want to be like, "Stop! Don't listen. It's terrible. Don't listen." What I really want to say is, you don't have to tell me shit. Just write a 5-star review.
That's true.
I was like, that would be that would make me feel good, and we don't have to have this awkward conversation. I say it every you listen. Well, do you listen to the first 3 minutes of every episode where I tell you to spread a little love? Thank you for listening, everyone.
That's right. That's right.
So you mentioned that you went before we started recording that you went to a ball.
Yes, sir. Maturitní ples is the Czech term for it.
And you
the maturita is the... I did not have my tuxedo. I didn't have my parents overnight priority ship it to the Czech Republic, unfortunately. I was rocking my suit. But yeah, and maturitní ples just stand. I mean, I believe it literally means like the ball for the maturita or something like that. Which the maturita is the final exit exam, and that's when you graduate. And what's interesting is a lot of Czechs call it prom, but I saw quite a few differences between the Czech ball and prom in the United States. First of all, the maturitní ples, a similarity is you have to buy tickets, like in prom, but the tickets here in the Czech Republic are significantly cheaper. But a big difference is the balls or the proms, whatever you want to call them, they're actually hosted by each class. So the seniors, there's usually like 4 or 5 classes, right? And usually they're like, 4A, 4B, 4C, so on and so forth. And so the one I went to was, and they all have a theme. right? So this one was freak show, like American Horror Story. And they had like a performance and a dance. And their class teacher also came out dressed in like a red, almost looked like that video of Panic at the Disco, kind of. I think you might know what I'm talking about.
That's a great reference.
Right? Where the guy has he has a red jacket on and like a top hat.
Yeah.
And like a cane. But it was really great, man. It was a lot of fun.
Kind of like high class carnival or something.
Exactly. Exactly. But you know, there's just something.
Were you there as a chaperone? I assume.
I was no. I was just there hanging out with my friend John.
Wait, but this was for your school, right?
No. This is for the gymnasium here.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Your school.
I don't teach at the gymnasium. I teach at a technical school.
Okay.
So this was there are I think 3 or 4 different schools here in Chomutov. Yeah, you're good. It was funny. I told some of the people there because I also saw some of my students and they asked me, well, why are you here at the gymnasium ball? I told them I needed to prepare myself and train myself for when my school has balls. Exactly. But
so it's for like the older people.
Yeah, it's to celebrate the seniors. And what's interesting is each class they have to do everything themselves from what I've heard. Like they're the ones who have to like get the sponsors, sell the tickets, book
like
the
prom.
venue. Yeah.
Except I guess some schools there's like prom committee where all the students do that stuff, right?
Right. Yeah, and I don't even know if my school had one or not.
A prom?
No, prom committee.
Yeah, I don't know.
We had a prom.
I think the school just did it.
Right. I think it's the same.
But
here.
I think maybe I'm getting most of that also from sitcoms from the 90s and early 2000s. They all had prom committees.
Right. That is true.
I believe Sabrina was on a prom committee, and Sabrina the Teenage Witch. I think Ginger from As Told by Ginger got onto the prom committee, and she was super nervous because she was out of her element.
Okay. Interesting. But yeah, it was a fantastic time. There's just something special about it. Well, first of all, it was held in the theater, and the theater here is really beautiful. It's this older building, and there's just something special about when everybody's like dressed up really nicely. And I have to say, man, I have never seen so many beautiful women in one area in my entire life.
Are you allowed to say this about these students? These are no relation to you.
Well, it wasn't all students. There were also a lot of teachers, parents.
Okay.
I mean, there had to have been at least about 1,000 people there.
Whoa! So is this open to anyone?
Well, you have to buy a ticket.
Right. Okay. I didn't realize. I heard you had to buy a ticket part. But I thought I thought you got in because you knew a teacher that taught there or something, and you went with someone.
I know a student that goes there. That's how I got the ticket.
Jeez. Okay.
But yeah, it was a really good time, and met a lot of people. I'm really surprised that
how did the Czechs
I didn't
party?
confuse every name. I mean, I feel like that's the thing, dude. The more time I spend in different cultures, it seems like, generally speaking, people party kind of the same way.
Yeah, partying's partying.
Exactly. Doesn't matter what country you're in.
Yeah, they just drink different booze to get drunk, but everyone is partying. Yeah, that's a good point.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was great. It was really cool to see some of my students. I was really worried, to be honest with you, man. Like I usually, you know me, I'm a social guy. I like to go and go to parties and socialize with people. But I was really worried that it would just be me and my friend John, and I wouldn't really know anybody else,
right?
Because I don't teach at the gymnasium, so I only know a couple of his friends, and that's just about it. But there were at least 10 to 15 of my students there as well. So I sat with them, and we had a couple beers, and we're talking, and it was a fantastic time.
You seem to do well in like you saying you're nervous that you weren't going to know anyone, which obviously I can completely relate to a situation like that, and I think most people can. But you seem to do pretty well in those situations. But it's interesting to see that you're still nervous in them, but you usually tend to come out of the situations like, oh yeah, I met this guy named Mark. He is a hockey player from Japan, that Mark from Japan.
Right. Well, I think that's the thing. It's almost like, it's kind of like when I used to play a lot of gigs. And I would always be really nervous before the gig. But the moment you step on the stage and you hit that first chord,
Right.
a lot of the nervousness goes away. And I
You
think
just have
it's
to do
the
it
same
at some
thing.
point.
Right. Exactly. And I have to say, for all of our listeners out there, don't be afraid to put yourself in some of those situations. I think there's just something really commendable about being able to go somewhere, especially where you don't necessarily know a ton of people, and put yourself out there and just try to meet some new people. I mean, it was really cool to meet just all these different people, friends of my students. I ran into two. Well, it's kind of a complicated story, but the simplified version is
Well, good, because I've been keeping up well so far.
right. One of my students, they live in a town that's like kind of next to Chomutov. It's not too far, and he goes to our technical school here in Chomutov, and his brother goes to the gymnasium in Kadaň, which is that town, that's not too far from here. And there's another English teacher that I know. She's American. In the same program that I am in Kadaň. So I met a few of her students last night. And so the 3 or 4 of us conspired to get her to come to the next ball here in Chomutov.
Nice.
So we'll see if we can get her to come as well, which would be great. She is such a wonderful person. But what was really nice to hear was when I was talking to her students were just raving about how much they loved her as a teacher. And then what I did not expect was my students overheard them saying this, and they said the same thing about me, which was just really good to hear, Pulling on my heartstrings a little bit. Exactly. So I'm very thankful that, I was able to go to this ball. Shout out to my buddy John, and shout out to all the students there as well, who I was able to, get to know a little better and have a great conversation with and have a lot of fun. And, I will be going to plenty more balls, Jared, so I'm sure I'll have some more stories for you.
I mean, as long as you keep overhearing your students spread a little love. There is something, right. I mean, I think I can understand why that would feel great, too, because that seems like most of the reason why you do the job is for that sort of stuff. Is right. For the students to rave about you and say you're a great teacher. And it's like, oh, I guess it's working.
Right. Exactly. And I mean, I was really impressed too by the level of the English of all the students, because they could have just been like, what, no, I'm here with my friends, we're just going to speak Czech. And a lot of them were really polite, and we spoke English the whole time, which I also really appreciate.
If you were around, they made sure that they code switched for you.
Exactly. They did. So that was really nice of them. Exactly. So what's been going on with you, Jared? Anything new or exciting?
Dude, no. I really no. I was really hoping you wouldn't ask me this, because it's like, it hasn't been pathetic like during the
Christmas break, surviving on
it's just been
Pop-Tarts.
like I've just been low motivation is all. But so I haven't done much, but I have been practicing a lot of piano, and something that I wanted to actually, I didn't want to make a point of this, but because you brought it up, I did go back to that Bach song. Remember I mentioned that I was relearning that, and it took me like a day or two of kind of fumbling through it, and then once I started picking it up, it's like back again.
Nice. That's awesome.
So
That's
great. It kind of just took I had to stumble back into it, but I was like, oh wait, I got it, and then and then the rest of it just started coming back to me as so I've been playing that.
It's weird how that works.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Nice. Yeah, it's so strange how that works with anything. I feel like that also language kind of works like that too. You know what I mean? If you haven't spoken like German in a while,
yeah,
and then you start speaking it, and you're like, oh shoot, I didn't even know that I knew these words in German.
I
and
do
here
know
they
this.
are. Right? Exactly.
Yeah, you just have to it's probably mostly a mental thing, just like reminding yourself that you do know this, and finding that memory in your brain.
Oh,
and
definitely
reigniting it. Reignite
Absolutely.
the memory in your brain. The memory of Bach. By the way, speaking of which, Right next to me is this little bust of Bach.
Oh, nice. Where did you get that?
My piano teacher gave it to me for Christmas last year.
Nice. Dude, your piano teacher sounds pretty awesome.
She's pretty cool. Yeah, no, she is. Yeah.
She invites you to all these cool things.
Yeah.
Some are a little quirky, but
But I
quirky.
I like it. I like it because how else would I find like chamber concerts? Now I could probably, if it weren't for this podcast, I could probably have done without the light show. But
right. But that horrifying Grinch was also worth the trip.
I still sometimes when I'm scrolling through my pictures, I still sometimes kind of see, or like through our Instagram, I'll still be like, "Oh, jeez."
Right.
Even more than that is the light up, the red glowing cross. I think is even creepier than the Grinch. But yeah, no, she's cool, and that's as you were mentioning just a second ago. That's even more than the piano lessons, what I like about having her as my piano teacher is like I feel like I'm paying for the piano lessons and for all of these
quirky
things that she's like showing me, like these chamber concerts.
Right.
It's like that's
awesome.
It's cheap too, so it's not even that big of a deal.
That's always a plus. That's for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been it's been slow going. Socially with my life, but I have at least been putting a lot of time into the piano. And I took a bath last night.
Oh, nice. Dude,
right,
there's something glorious. There's something glorious. Let me just say this. There's something glorious about taking a bath, though, dude.
Oh, yeah.
Super relaxing. It's so great. But yeah. How about we move on to our shout-outs? What do you think?
Yeah, that sounds good. I assume you have some shout-outs.
I do.
Can I actually start?
For sure.
I want to ask you if this deserves shout-out status. So Japan has been, according to the Henley Passport Index, Japan's passport has been ranked the most powerful passport to have in 2019. And they rank it essentially on its access to countries. And how easy it is for you to access these countries, and Japan's passport offers you access to 190 countries.
Oh wow! I would say that's shout out worthy for sure.
I have a list of the top 10.
Oh, sweet! You read my mind. I was just about to ask you which other countries
that's where you come
are
in.
up there. Oh, do I have to guess?
Yeah, man.
All right, let's see here. Well, I know the U.S. is probably within the top 10. It's not number 2 though. I doubt it.
No,
am I
it's
right?
not number 2.
Okay, I'm gonna guess like number 2 is probably a European country. I'm just gonna throw out Germany because I like Germany.
No. Well, let me give you. I'll say this one. You're close in the sense, in number wise, but number 2 is an Asian country.
Oh, okay. South Korea?
No. I'll give you one more guess, and then I'll give it to you.
Okay. China?
No, it's Singapore.
Oh, yeah, I never would have guessed that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's
so number 1
I want to give you a clue
Singapore.
because that's not one that would probably quickly come to your mind, but I think once you hear it, that kind of makes sense.
How many countries for Singapore?
189. And then, so you said Germany, and Germany is number 3, but they share it with one other country. That's also a European country.
With France?
Yes.
Nice.
I don't really. That's the new correct sound, but I don't like it. I prefer the the ham horn.
Right. Much better.
All right, and then I'll go through some of these other ones. Number 4 is Denmark, Finland, Italy, and Sweden. They all share number 4.
Okay.
Number 5 is Luxembourg and Spain. 6, Austria, Netherlands, Norway, Portugal, Switzerland, United Kingdom, and the U.S.
Okay.
And then number 7, Belgium, Canada, Greece, Ireland. Number 8. Guess what number 8 is?
Number 8. Is it a European country?
Yes. Yes, it is a European country.
And one we didn't mention. Czech Republic.
There we go. Yes.
Nice. All right.
Výborný.
Nice.
Yes, it's the Czech Republic. And then Malta, and then Australia, Iceland, and New Zealand. Those are the top 10.
And so, correct me if I'm wrong, but these are just based on the number of countries you can visit, correct?
Right. So I didn't name all the numbers, but just assume that it's descending by 1 every time, and in terms of accessibility from 190.
Which countries can't the U.S. visit?
I don't know that answer, but I have some of the lowest accessibility.
Ooh, let's hear him. All right, let's hear him.
So this is number 99 to 104. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for some reason. I feel like I must be missing some. But I have the website here, so I can pull up the full list. No, that's what it is. 99 to 104. Do you want to guess what some of these are?
I would.
Oh, by the way, sorry. I just realized too. My eyesight deceived me. Number 2, you mentioned South Korea. I just want to give them their props. It's Singapore and South Korea.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So you were right.
So I was half right. I
want to give them their props. I want to give them their props on that.
Nice.
I missed that. I'm sorry. Anyway, back to 99 to 104.
I'm gonna assume. I would assume Syria is probably somewhere in there.
Actually, no.
Really?
Yes,
okay.
it is. Yes, it is. I'm sorry.
Oh, it is.
It's just the way they do the list is not the best.
Okay, gotcha.
But yeah. Syria is number 103.
Okay.
So I'll go through some of it. You said Syria, Palestine is one of them.
Okay.
Sudan, Eritrea, which kind of surprises me. I didn't know that. Yemen, which I guess is not really surprising. Pakistan. Kind of surprising that it's at the very bottom, I guess.
Right.
Afghanistan and Iraq are 104, and Somalia shares a spot with Syria.
And I would assume a lot of those you need like a special visa to come to the United States. I would think.
Yeah, probably. I mean, a lot of these were, yeah, for sure, probably. I mean, I don't want to speak out of my like I don't know what the proper untranslatable is there. I don't want to speak out of turn here, but I do believe some of these countries were like even recently included in that quote unquote Muslim ban that everyone was talking about a year or two ago with Trump.
Right. Yeah, it could have been. What's interesting about that is Saudi Arabia was not on there.
And yeah, it's not on that list either.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Huh. Which is interesting about Saudi Arabia, though, because one of our previous guests, Annabelle, has been there. And she told me you actually have to leave your passport with the authorities.
Oof.
Which freaks me out a little bit. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, me too. That's rough.
Yeah.
I didn't.
So.
But it's like a nice place, isn't it? Like visually?
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had students in one of my English classes that were all Saudis. And I had them do presentations about their regions or their towns. And yeah, it seemed really beautiful and seemed really nice.
I couldn't get past the leaving the passport thing. That's already a turn off for me. No.
Right. Yeah, that'd be
a little too much
scary.
control they have. I don't like that.
Right. And I asked Annabelle, well, what happens if they misplace or lose your passport? She's like, well, I guess you're stuck there.
Yeah.
So
I can only imagine them quote unquote misplacing your passport. I think they have I'm sure their system for not losing a passport is pretty solid, but
right.
I'm sure there have been a lot of quote unquote lost lost passports. We're gonna have to keep you for a couple extra days while we look for your passport.
Right.
Just stay here.
Well, I would assume. I mean, there's got to be a U.S. embassy there. I would think, right?
Probably. But
Okay.
I'm sure there's just an added level of difficulty even with an embassy of your own country without your passport.
Oh, definitely.
Because you're just claiming that you're American.
Well, that's why you got to keep copies. Paper copies.
Right. Oh, that's a good point.
That's the trick. I have some different copies saved.
You probably have copies of your passport like Jason Bourne has passports.
That's right. You better believe it. You better believe it.
Like you just flip over your mattress and there's like 6 copies of your passport. Just like laminated.
Exactly. Well, my buddy David has a laminated copy, which I think is really smart. He has a laminated copy, and he'll bring that with him when he travels within the Czech Republic.
I mean, if you think about it, though, a laminated color copy of your passport could look pretty official.
It does. When I saw it at first, I was like, "What is that?" I was like, "How did you get?"
all you have to do is manage the crease, or do each page separately, and sort of somehow, you could easily make that look pretty official.
Right.
Huh.
So, yeah.
My passport's right there. I might need to do that at work tomorrow.
There you go. Gonna start calling you Jared Bourne. Nice. All right, well, I want to give a couple shout-outs as well since we are on the topic. My first one goes out to our brothers and sisters to the north of us in the United States, a.k.a. Canada. And Canadian air traffic controllers bought pizza for their American colleagues affected by the U.S. government shutdown.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. The Canadians. I mean, hey, people always say that there's, stereotypes, even if they are positive, they hurt people sometimes. But the Canadians are reinforcing that they're just very nice people. I was reading an article before. I want to get your opinion on this. I was reading an article right before we started about the shutdown and TSA, saying that so they're still required to come to work. I saw that after you mentioned that to me. And but now it's because it's been so long. Some of them are starting to not show up. They're like, we can't keep doing this. They're probably going to find side jobs or other jobs. And apparently there's been a huge boost in people applying for TSA jobs because it's like, well, we know a lot of people are going to lose their job, and this is our chance to take advantage of that.
Oh, a bunch of scabs.
And it's like I guess it is kind of it does sound kind of gross when you first hear it, but that's also coming from me, Jared, that has a comfortable job that is not affected by something like this, or that hasn't been. I don't have a family that I have to support. I haven't been unemployed for any amount of time. So when I first heard it, I was like, oh, that's gross. It's like, people are struggling, and so you're just using that to take advantage. But it's like, hey, but if you need a good job, and the government shut down. It's been shut down for a long time. But
over 20 days, I'm pretty sure.
It's going to start up eventually. It's not going to be shut down forever. So it's like,
let's hope not.
Who knows? Maybe it might be a blessing in disguise if it's shut down forever at this point. So it's like people out there need freaking jobs, and I guess this is the way to do it, and this is society. It's like this is how the world works, and it's kind of gross sometimes. But I think it's hard for me to blame people trying to take advantage of wanting to get a better job because a TSA job.
Yeah, I get that.
A TSA job, when the government is not shut down, is a fine job. I mean, people tend to hate you and treat you like crap. But as far as benefits and pay goes, you can get an apartment, and and you have insurance. Right.
Yeah, I mean, I totally understand where those people are coming from. But I mean, I've read a couple articles about how people, especially TSA workers, they can't even afford to drive to afford the gas to drive to work.
Yeah. That's why I was also hesitant to say they were getting cars that you can drive to work, because I still do know that they're not paid well, but it still is a step up for a lot of people. And
most definitely.
The benefits, I think, is a even bigger part. I think that, especially with government jobs, I think they attract you a lot with the benefits too.
Right.
Because you do have insurance, which I think is a big thing.
Oh, it's a huge plus. But the thing I don't understand is why I know we're kind of veering off this episode from spreading the love, but that's all right.
I'm sorry.
Sometimes
I just read this article and I wanted to get your opinion.
Right. I mean, sometimes like anything in life, you need balance, and if you want to spread the love, sometimes you gotta. I'm not gonna say spread some hate, but Well,
and this is by no means has taken away from what the Canadians did. The Canadians did a good thing in response to what we're talking about right now.
And just back to that story.
What kind of pizza? Because it depends on how much.
I don't know what kind of pizza, but there were 32 pizzas.
Because I'm gonna be pissed if they said, "Oh, we brought you a bunch of pizza with bacon, and it's that shitty Canadian bacon."
Or it's all
what is this?
Hawaii.
This is
it's
ham,
all Hawaiian
not bacon.
pizzas.
Yeah, all pineapple pizza.
Yeah. So
that is
interesting. Interesting. They also had Also, Vancouver air traffic controllers bought lunch for their counterparts in Seattle. So there's this picture of two puzzle pieces, and one of them is the Canadian flag going into the United States flag, and it says lunch money for the Seattle controllers, so people were donating money to basically, pay for all this. And this was a few days ago, and this was 21 days without a paycheck. So now we're probably at day 23 or 24. Pretty crazy. But the one thing I don't understand about this shutdown is why do lower level federal employees not get their paychecks, yet I'm sure everybody in Congress and the Senate are all getting their fat paychecks.
Right. Wait, so do they really still get their paychecks?
I think so. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
I make like a okay salary, and even I would almost definitely be struggling after 21 days without getting paid. I'd be like, okay, this is gonna this is gonna be a simple. We're gonna make simple meals,
right?
And yeah, that's
It'd
rough.
be tough.
And let's hope I get paid before. But and I did see that. Oh, I actually. I asked a question last episode that got answered just the other day. Or I asked, will they get back pay? And apparently, if you're a government worker, you'll get your back pay. However, if you're a contracted government worker, you're not going to get that back pay. So they're screwed.
Oh, no. So they're...
But if you...
that's horrible.
Yeah,
that is so horrible. Man, my sympathy goes out to all these people. That's just that's too bad.
And these quote unquote contracted workers, like they've these are like year long or years quote unquote year plus long contracts. It's not like so this is like their livelihood. It's not like, oh, we just hired them for 2 weeks or something like that.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely their livelihood. Well, let's spread a little more love though, and I want to give a shout out to India. Because they will add a record level of solar power capacity in 2019. I don't hear that. I see you looking around, but I don't hear that. Is there like a fly in your room?
No. There's this loud humming coming from somewhere. I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure you didn't hear that because it was...
You're good. I don't hear anything. Interesting.
Okay.
But yeah, so India plans to... reach nearly 14 gigawatts, which is about 50% more than the capacity that they added last year. So shout out to India for trying to go a bit greener and adding their solar power.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, any steps that are taken are useful with like the level of people that are there and pollution that's coming from like industrialization too. So it's good to see that they're
definitely
actively fighting that.
All right, I got one more shout out, which this one is a really, really touching story, and it comes out of Dallas, Texas. A school asked for 50 male mentors. Guess how many showed up, Jared?
Oh, I saw that. With hundreds? Was it hundreds?
600.
Yeah, I saw that. That's awesome.
Which is really amazing. And the story is Pastor Donald Parrish Jr., he sent out a plea on Facebook for male mentor volunteers to help the Billy Earl Dade Middle School in South Dallas fill seats at their first Breakfast with Dads event. But school administrators had concerns that no one would show up. We know the majority of our students were not going to have dads present. Many students don't have any male figures around, or at least the kind who would show up for a school event like this. So I think that's great. And this does show one of the positive things about social media, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Where you think, he said we thought we would get about 50 people, and 50 turned into 600. And what's crazy about this story is there were so many men registering for this event that the website that conducted background checks crashed because there was so much traffic.
I mean, it's not great, but it's great that many people signed up.
Exactly.
Stuff like that makes me I almost hate looking at like the pictures when stuff like that happens on the websites because it always makes me like shed tears to myself, and I was like, oh jeez.
For sure, dude. It gets me super emotional. And I mean, as someone coming from, I've been very fortunate that my father has been involved in all of my life. I can't even imagine what some of these children are going through when you have an event at school like Breakfast for Dads.
Right.
And you don't have a dad to show up. And so it's really great. It's really, really great. So shout out to all of the guys out there. Since there's 600 of them, we can't go by individual name. We'll be here all night. Rapid fire. Shout outs to all of you. Thank you all. And it's always great to see a community come together for the kids like that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So no beer of the pod this week. It's a morning recording, and I have some self-respect.
It's all good. We'll come back with a good one next episode. Well, Jared, since there's no beer review of the pod, do you happen to know what time it is?
Yeah, there might not be a beer of the pod review, but there's always untranslatables on the Untranslatable podcast.
You better believe it. Well, Jared, I want to start you off with an Afrikaans one.
Okay. It's a jackal. A jackal. It's a jackal.
It's not. It is a dog, but not a jackal.
Okay.
I avoid the jackal ones because I know those are the ones we've done.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is Afrikaans, as I said. And it's een hond uit een bos gelses, which means to talk a dog out of a bush.
You need to give me a chance to try to figure it out.
Oh, sorry. That's my bad.
These are kind of similar to English and German, but anyway, repeat.
I think all you would have gotten was maybe een hond.
How
Een hond
dare you?
uit een bos gezels.
Slipping on gator piss. Doubting my abilities. What's the English definition again? You're right.
To talk a dog out of a bush.
Okay. Is it? What the hell is going on out there? If this transfers to this podcast, I'm going somewhere, and I'm going to take whatever saw or loud a tool that is and do something that is going to get more graphic than I wanted it to. Is that like to talk someone off a ledge, like people need to do for me with whoever's? You hear it now?
I don't hear it. No. Here, let me turn up my. Oh, I do hear it.
Yeah. It sounds like someone's using a leaf blower in the room outside of my Harry Potter closet.
Maybe that's what they're doing.
Oh, I'm sorry, people.
You got an intruder leaf blowing your apartment, Jared. You better stock up on your self-defense. But yeah, so this does not mean to talk somebody off of a ledge.
Leave me alone.
That was pretty good. Leave me alone. That's funny. No, so to talk a dog out of a bush, apparently it just means like to have a great conversation, have a stimulating conversation.
Oh, okay. So it's just like a long conversation. You and I, we tend to talk a dog out of a bush here on the Untranslatable podcast.
I would say so. Especially with 5-star jokes like leave me alone.
Well, Chad, you just blow me away with all of your intelligence. I can't help it.
Ooh, damn, I was hoping that wasn't a joke.
It was just a bit more leaf blowing humor.
Right, exactly.
I love you're hoping that wasn't a joke. It was an honest statement built around a joke.
That's fair. The best comedy comes from honesty, in my opinion.
Exactly.
That's for sure. Well, Jared, what do you got for me today?
My first one is Estonian, and it's Pil tuleb pika ilu peale.
Sounded more Italian than Estonian, but
well,
continue.
I'm sure I said it wrong. So it literally means tears come after long beauty, or you can more loosely. So that's like I think more of a literal translation, but you could also say long joy will result in tears.
Okay, so that just means when you work really hard for something or you achieve something that you really want or you really enjoy, you cry tears of joy, right?
No, the other way around.
Oh, so what do you mean? So wait, the other way around.
It's not.
Yeah, just give me what it means.
So say you have some friend that you need to get rid of in your life, and you're like, oh man, I've been doing great in the Czech Republic. I went to a ball and I heard that my students loved me, but why wouldn't they? I my podcast is great. I'm at episode 59 with one of the greatest people I know in the world, Jared.
That's
and
true.
Then your friend that you need to get out of your life. It's like, yeah, but those students don't really know what they're talking about. They're just dumb kids, and no one listens to your podcast anyway. It's all going to come to an end at some point anyway. Why are you getting your hopes up?
Oh, really? So it's more like. So it's more just like you do all this work that makes you happy, and then when it's over, you're sad.
Kind of.
Okay.
It means that long joy will result in eventually, not to get too optimistic about anything in life, because eventually it'll end in sadness.
Right. Oh, okay. That's fair.
Or like joy will come to an abrupt end I only laugh. I laugh because I don't know, it's just funny. But there were a couple Estonian ones like this that were essentially saying like, "Don't get your hopes up."
Okay, interesting.
So usually it's said when children are playing, and so
Okay.
and like when kids are playing, and how you're having a bunch of fun with friends when you're a little kid, and then someone inevitably gets hurt, and then a
Right.
parent would say that that's what happens when you're having too much fun. It's always going to
Right.
end in.
That's true. That's true.
And it's like, thanks, Mom.
I was
I feel
definitely
better now.
Right. I was definitely feeling that. Definitely feeling that when I left my year abroad in Austria. That's for sure.
Oh yeah. I mean, like I can imagine like an immense sort of feeling of sadness as you're
for
leaving.
sure. I kid you not, man. I was on the train with my parents, and we crossed the Austrian border into Germany, and I cried.
Oof.
It was tough because I didn't know when, not really if, but I just didn't know when I would be back.
Yeah.
As
I get older, I notice it's becoming easier for me to cry as I get older, not harder.
You're kind of
I feel
right.
like I'm loosening up a little bit.
Right.
But I feel like a lot of my lack of crying when I'm younger is more of like something in me, like a don't cry in me sort
Right.
of thing. And now it's just like, who gives it? Like, who cares?
Right. Well, I think there's something about crying that's healthy and a little cathartic. I mean, we
Yeah.
do it for a reason.
Yeah, I guess so.
There's a reason why we have that emotional response.
Yeah.
No matter how logical or illogical the reason is why you're crying. But yeah. All right, Jared. Well, actually, my
I
next
hate this episode, by the way.
my next untranslatable is check for you, and
Okay.
and misusing this could definitely probably cause some tears. The
Physical
the phrase.
tears?
I mean, I don't know any other type of tear. Well, can you?
I meant physical, like someone's gonna punch you.
Oh no. Well, maybe.
Okay.
So the phrase is slibovat hory doli, which means to promise mountains and valleys.
Is that like saying you're like madly in love with someone?
No. Mm-mm.
To promise mountains and valleys. To overextend yourself. To like make too big of a promise that
Exactly.
a promise that you can't keep.
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah, making a rash promise. So promising mountains and valleys.
That definitely does. That definitely. I've probably promised mountains and valleys before. I'm not above saying that.
Oh, me too.
And then in my head
Me
being
too.
like, okay, relax.
Right.
I think you're. I think you need to step away from the situation for a second and evaluate what you're saying right now.
Exactly.
My next one is Romanian, and it's a faccia umbra pumatili degeaba, and it means to cast a shadow in vain.
To cast a shadow in vain.
What the hell is wrong with me? This is yeah. Do you have any guesses? What that means?
It sounds very dark.
Just imagine what that
Cast a
means.
shadow in vain.
It's an untranslatable that if it were said in English would fit. You would It would be it's what you would think it is.
Okay. I'm trying to not over. That's the problem, is overthinking things. I'm trying to not overthink it.
And people don't realize that even though it's just the two of us, we are kind of put on the spot here a little bit.
Oh, 100%, without a doubt. We do it for all of you beautiful people out there listening.
At some point, we should sign up for Family Feud. You and I. We'd probably. We
would dominate.
Maybe after episode like 200 or something, we'll be so settled behind a microphone, under pressure.
Exactly. We'll even be able to finish. All right. We'll even be able to finish.
Jeez. I don't. What?
I was hoping you'd say each other's sentences.
Oh, usually you give me.
That's funny. We're not there yet. We're not quite there yet.
You give me that point and expect a drop, and I was like, I don't know what drop you expect here. I almost played the ham horn, which would have been hilarious.
That would have been great.
Finish each other's ham horns. You know what? It's funny that we just realized how bad we'd be on one of these game shows. And what I would tell you as you keep on missing answers and losing us points, I'd say, Chad, you're really casting a shadow in vain here on the Family Feud. I thought way higher of you. Okay. I had way higher expectations of you.
So is that when you're saying something negative when you don't really have a place to say it? Right.
No. Casting a shadow in vain is essentially saying that the person is worthless or useless or good for nothing.
Ah, okay.
So, I mean, think about it, though. Casting a shadow in vain, and you're essentially saying you're a waste. It's essentially saying you're a waste of space.
Oh,
or it's like
even
your shadow is useless its existence is pointless, and it's a waste of space. Vain is an interesting word. I remember we could do a whole episode on the word vain.
That's true.
Because it has like 14 different meanings and 5 different spellings. Mm-hmm. Anyway. And also, if you didn't know this, I collect weather vanes. Do you have any more?
No, I do not.
I'll give you one more Romanian one while we're here. A frecamenta. To rub a mint.
To rub a mint.
To rub a mint. Just finish off and keep in mind the series of all the different ones all the other untranslatables I've told you today. It's kind of along the same.
Okay, so it's
vein.
Negative.
It's kind of along the same vein.
so I'm assuming it's negative then, right?
Yeah.
Okay. To rub a mint. Is that like to?
Just sitting around rubbing mints.
So is that like you're just doing nothing?
Yeah, wasting time, doing nothing.
Okay. I gotta tell
Over
you, man,
here rubbing mints.
Right, I gotta tell you, I've been reading a couple different books on my Kindle. I forget which. I've been bouncing between 3 or 4 of them.
Reading. So you're just rubbing mints.
Right. Well, what was crazy was the guy who wrote the book. I don't remember which one. As I said, I've been bouncing between 3 or 4
You brought that up and you
ones.
don't even know what the book is you're about to talk about?
I think it's called The Art of Conversation. I think.
Interesting. This episode's called The Art of Code Switching.
Oh, there you go. Perfect. And the guy said that people who like to waste time are basically just waiting to die.
Yeah. Oh, jeez.
So yeah, that was pretty. When I read that, I kind of got chills, and I was like, dang. All right, well, I guess people shouldn't be rubbing mints anymore.
Yeah, I sometimes when I'm rubbing mints, I feel like sometimes I'm actively aware of that myself, whereas that I'm literally just wasting away. Like I'm just. I guess if you break it down to its base level, it is just waiting to die. Maybe I've never taken it to that far of a place, but
right.
it does just seem like I'm just like, yeah, I guess it is waiting to die because it's just like waiting, waiting for time to pass until what? It's and that's part of the reason why I even though I still rub mints pretty regularly, that I like having piano, where it's like there should be no excuse to rub mints. If you're that lazy or if you're that bored, then play piano. Just sit there in front of the piano and do that if you're gonna, do nothing, quote unquote.
Exactly.
Nothing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you might as well do what you enjoy while we're here, because we
might as well listen to the Untranslatable podcast. Go ahead.
That's true. That's true. Just got to do what you love. Speaking of things we love, we are definitely, I would say, lovers of languages here at the Untranslatable Podcast, among other things. And so we thought it would be fun today to discuss the topic of code switching. And I would just like to tell our listeners out there what it is. And I have a really good definition here from researchgate.net. And so code switching can be defined as the alternation between languages or dialects in speaking or writing in a grammatically overall consistent manner. I think what they mean by that is just you're able to speak fairly coherent sentences. And what's interesting with code switching is it usually appears in three different types, which is extracentennial, intracentennial, or intra-word. And what's interesting is regarding research, it used to be considered something of a lower level of use of language. But now, thankfully, the field of second language acquisition has regarded it more as a normal, natural, or even beneficial phenomenon of bilingualism or multilingual environments and societies, especially in education and language teaching.
What do you mean by lower level?
Like lower level use of language, meaning if I'm learning Spanish and I don't know the word for bathroom, I'll say donde está bathroom.
Okay, I think as far as like language code switching goes, that's probably where a lot of mine would have laid then. Have lain is mostly using it, one, like when I was first in Germany, then two, like when I talked with you. Right. What was code switching was mostly just to fill in the gaps of whatever word I didn't know.
Right. And it does serve that function, without a doubt. But there are also different functions like, I also view it as a communicative skill or even communicative competence. Not only when you're using it as a strategy to make up for the lack of vocabulary in a foreign language, but also when you know someone and you two you share a common language or two common languages, you can code switch in between because, as we've discussed many times on the podcast, sometimes there are just better words in a foreign language that can describe something that maybe English can't, or German can't, or Czech, or Spanish, or Mandarin.
There's just that joie de vivre.
Exactly. Exactly.
Have you ever been in a situation where, say, you can't remember a verb in German, and you've been like, say you wanted to use it in the past tense, whatever it is, and you're like, oh, I've never like gethrown that football or something like that, where it's like you still like add like sort of sometimes the conjugation to it, or do it where it's like you do the English verb, but you still add the proper ending, like en or t or st ending that would be on the end of it.
It's funny you mention that, Jared, because there are a lot of verbs now in German that have come from English, and they do that.
Gegoogelt.
Now there are exactly gegoogelt, gechillt. There's a lot of good ones, and a lot of them also have to do with technology and computers. But the tricky thing with German is, there are certain in German. Sorry to go on a grammatical tangent right now, but in German they have verbs that they call separable and inseparable verbs, meaning there will be a prefix on the verb and you have to separate those and put the prefix at the end of the sentence, right? Like
umziehen.
Like exactly, umziehen or einkaufen to go ich kaufe morgen ein. Exactly. So
Isn't
anyways,
einkaufen to sell?
No, einkaufen is to go like shopping.
How do you say sell?
Verkaufen.
Verkaufen.
But that one's not separable. See, so that's the other tricky thing with German verbs. That one's not separable, and you have to memorize them. But the fairs aren't.
If it's F or F, VER, those usually those are never separable, right?
Yeah, those aren't. No, those are never separable. It's usually the ones like ein, an, auf. Exactly. Those are usually the separable ones. Exactly. Ooh. Exactly.
See, I know
good work.
F I'm talking about.
Yeah, you do. And so, but the funny thing is, Germans will use, like I've heard Germans say downloaden for download, right? To download.
Right.
But then the question is, when you use it in the past tense, if you separate it, do you say downgeloadet or gedownloaded? And to my ear, I think downgeloadet sounds better than gedownloaded.
Gedownloaded makes more sense to me.
Okay.
Downloaded. But I understand because it's the same structure as an like in English as it would because theoretically download is how some verbs could be like that's the same construction as some German verbs, as we mentioned, where it starts with a preposition and then there's the actual verb after.
Right.
So it does fit that same sort of form as that. So yeah.
Right.
Huh.
So in theory, that should be separable.
Download it would make sense if
Exactly.
you're actually going to do that.
And
But that makes sense that they. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if most Germans our age or younger wouldn't even know the German word for download, because I'm sure there actually is a German word for download, but I'm sure every time they've seen it, it's been on some sort of device that they've been using, and I guarantee that device does not write download. Even if it's a German website, it probably still writes download in English.
I hate to burst your bubble here, but actually it's...
I'm going to cut all that out.
It's actually...
start over.
So the German verb is herunterladen.
Oh, I've seen that before. You're right.
Exactly. And so you will see it. And
But I guarantee, I still stand by that. I guarantee that they see download all the time.
Oh, probably.
Let me put
I mean,
it
if
that
they
way.
have any devices
Oh, my
set in
God.
English, they will.
You should have. But my stomach just butterflies as soon as he said. I was like, oh, fuck.
Right. The funny thing though about downloaden or download and herunterladen is that one's also separable. Heruntergeladen.
Right.
So on that same vein, if you will, it's I know it's a different kind of vein, but whatever. They also will do that, but I don't know if that's. See, I don't know if that's really code switching or if that's just, as they say in German, an Anglizismen, like an anglicized word that has become a normal part of the language.
Right.
I would say maybe if it's not that normal, then it's probably more code switching. But I would say when it becomes so normalized that you might even be able to find it in a more modern German dictionary, then maybe it's not English anymore, but it's anglicized German,
Right. Do you see a lot of code switching in your Czech classes, in your English classes with the Czech people, or is their English good enough?
Their English is good enough, and what's funny is if they don't know a word, they'll say, and I've memorized this phrase because I've heard it so many times. They'll say "jak se řekne," which means "how do you say," and then they'll say the word in Czech, which is funny because I'm sure they all know how to say "how do you say," but they'll look around the classroom and what I really like is that the students at my school, well, right, well,
They
right,
know you don't know.
right, but what I really like is the students here do tend to help each other out. Like they'll
That's
look
cool.
around the classroom and say, "jak se řekne," and then they'll say whatever word.
Would you prefer if they say "how do you say" and then say the word in Czech, because it is an English class?
I mean, yes and no. I think there are a lot of teachers out there that are really like sticklers about having their class 100% in English.
Right.
And I just know from my experience as a foreign language learner, it's not incredibly realistic.
It's just
and
a
I
little
think
too
it's
nitpicky at that point.
right. And I think it's also beneficial to use your first language or your native language to assist you in learning a language.
And I think it's cool in the sense that they're asking each other before they're asking you. I like that. I'm sure teachers would prefer that.
Right. Oh, for sure. Because a lot of language teachers will tell you we are not walking dictionaries. And it's true. Even though Jared thinks I'm a walking German dictionary, it's not true.
I don't believe it.
But yeah. And, I think code switching should also not only be welcomed in the classroom, but especially if the teacher speaks both of those languages, I think it should not only be welcomed, but it should be accepted as a normal practice in the classroom,
Don't fight it.
Exactly. It's normal, and I think the cool thing about code switching is it's also a way where you can share, your cultural knowledge, your cultural competence between your peers or your classmates or your colleagues or whoever, which I think is really cool. It's like a kind of a fun bonding moment when you can code switch with someone and they get exactly what you mean.
Do you, I was gonna say, can you talk about your experience code switching between Austrian German or English German or English German or Germany or German and Germany, And I just laughed at myself because I was like, I'm not interviewing Chad now.
You can interview me whenever you want, buddy.
Tell me about your experience. That's very interesting. So I'm glad we got to get you on.
I feel like I'm in NPR or something right now. But yeah, so in terms of code switching, I definitely have code switched or used code switching with my students when I've taught German before. And it was for various reasons. Sometimes I was even explaining something to them in English, and I would toss in a German word that I knew they all got. Like, I'll never forget, I was with some students, and what did I even say? I said something like, so are you guys going to go see any good Sehenswürdigkeiten while you're here? And it would have been faster and easier to say, are you going to see any sights while you're here? Right? But they were all my German students, and we had, studied that word, which is the German word for like sites or tourist attractions. And all the students got it, and they kind of laughed and told me what they were going to do. And I heard a story from another one of my students, which I thought was hilarious. I think they were actually at Schönbrunn in Vienna. And this is a beautiful place where if you walk up the hill in the gardens, you can see almost the whole city. In the background, and it's a really beautiful view. And one of the students said, look at that fucking blick. She's like, look at that fucking view. But I thought it was so great. And so that became an inside joke with the students. And I was at a restaurant with them, and we were finishing up our dinner. And one of the students said something like that, and they all started laughing. And I was like, what? I don't get what's so funny. And then they explained it. But that's a really good example of how code switching is not only used, I think, to transcend languages, but it's also really good, I think, for humor.
Yeah. That's kind of where my nickname Jart came from.
Oh, it's 100% where it came from, without a doubt. Yeah, we had a teacher in Austria that couldn't say Jared, and so we all started to call you Jart.
Yeah, because that's what she would call me. But then it really took on a life of its own with the Blacksoft part of it and all that stuff. But anyway, code switching to me is just like it's like I always kind of looked at it, at least the way I use it, as a crutch. But it doesn't bother me really. But it's definitely only used as a crutch.
For you,
for me, yes. To where like ideally I'd be speaking only German or only whatever language it is, but
right.
I don't know the word, so this is the best I can do, and I know the person knows the word usually.
Right. Oh yeah. The other thing though that you can do, going to toss out another fancy linguistic term for you, is you can do something that they call circumlocution, which means I know, fancy word, right? Whew. But basically, if you don't know the word, say, we'll just use the word window, for example, right? Because I'm looking at my window right now. If you didn't know the word for window in German, you could. I mean, it sounds a little crazy and sometimes sounds really goofy, and it probably is faster and more efficient to just use the English word. But if your goal was to only speak German, what you could do is, okay, if you don't know the word for window, you could say, the thing that you look out of. Or there are a lot of ways that you can do that when you learn a foreign language. I was actually talking to one of my students today. She has to do an interview. She actually applied for this really cool program to study abroad in the United States for a year. And so she said, well, I'm really nervous in the interview that I will get stuck on a word. And I told her, I said, you just need to not focus on the important thing about not even an interview, but just communication in general, is to get your point across. Whether or not you use the word you were looking for or a different word, if you say something with the same meaning, that's all that really matters at the end of the day.
Right. So now that once you explain what circumlocution means, it makes a lot more sense. You're circling around what the word is to try to locate the actual meaning of the word. And I think you make a good point with that tip that you gave, that if you don't focus so much on the fact that you're not thinking of the word that you're trying to say, but rather spend that time explaining what the word is that you can't, sometimes it might not even, like maybe they'll notice that you don't know the word, but it might not even come off that weird if you just like. I mean, obviously, it would probably be a word slightly more complicated than window, so it won't be like the thing you look out.
Right.
I think it only sounds weird to the person doing the talking because they're self-conscious and in their head.
Right. For sure.
Code switching to me has a whole different meaning than it does to you as the language professor talking about things like circumlocution and whatnot. To me, it's more of like a survival thing culturally. Like I've been code switching culturally before I even recognized that was a thing, and I think it goes down to the how's it going over there, buddy?
Great. Get my hoodie on.
It goes down to the like the kind of music I listened to, like the kind of clothes I wore as a kid, and I think that being the different person in a situation, there seems to be, at least for me, like the stronger need to sort of fit in, and be like, oh, why am I so different? In the music I listen to or whatever, or all that stuff, and I think that there's a like you sort of adopt hobbies or ways of life that you wouldn't have adopted otherwise, and it's also like there's the code switching. It's tough too because like my family's from the South, so like when I go back, when it just doesn't really happen anymore, but like when I would go back to Louisiana and like elementary school or middle school and all that stuff, people would be like, "Oh, you talk proper," or like, "Oh, you like," whereas like, "This is all I know. Like, I didn't set this up." Right. It's like this is. Right. It's like
wasn't planned.
I'm a product. Like, granted, I didn't have this sort of vocabulary when I was 8, but I'm a product of my surroundings. It's like I don't know what to tell you.
For sure.
It's like, and then like as I got older, even before I had the vocabulary, it honestly sometimes it might even have just turned offensive on my part, where it's like, yeah, sorry, I talk, I know how to properly form sentences. I don't have a stupid Southern accent. So there is like this whole sort of like it's something that sometimes I'm like it feels like. It feels like I wish it didn't exist, but it also seems like a necessary evil. And so I purposely brought this topic up for this reason because I knew that you talk about it in the language term. Mm-hmm. And did you have like classes on this as a grad student?
I mean, we had classes that discussed what code switching was, but we didn't really go much more into detail about it, unfortunately.
Well, welcome to Professor Jared's class, to Professor of Ethnic Studies now. Classes in session. So I was reading articles, as I do, and this person named Gene Demby, they wrote, we're looking at code switching a little more broadly. Many of us subtly, reflexively change the way we express ourselves all the time. We're hopscotching between different cultural and linguistic spaces in different parts of our own identity, sometimes within a single interaction. And I think that kind of explained all the jibber-jabber I said before about, my family being from the South, me growing up in the middle of nowhere in Michigan, and sort of like having to and everyone being like, oh, why is it that you do that? Or, oh, that's weird that you do that. Or like then going back to, like going back to these areas where like I'm the only, for example, black person, having to like be the official at like the age of, like 10, being like the official black spokesman. And it's like, I don't even like I'm still struggling to understand what it means for me to be black. And I'm speaking upon it at like the age of 10 or whatever.
Right.
When my teachers are shittily teaching me about Martin Luther King or whatever it is. So it was just like, I don't know. But there are some different kinds of code switching that I thought of. And obviously I want to get your opinion on this because you're my co-host. Is that the proper term, co-host? Are we both each other's co-hosts?
Yeah, we're each other's co-hosts.
Okay. So there's code switching at work.
Right.
There is code switching at home.
Mm-hmm.
There's code switching in different friend groups. There's code switching in different when you're on like vacation. There's a code switching even when you can't like speak the language. Not even a language code switching, but like have you not noticed? Say American people adopt some sort of accent or some sort of broken English when trying to communicate with someone of a different language that speaks broken English naturally because they're not native English, and
sure.
And so the person that is a perfect English speaker because they're American or British or whatever will adopt some sort of broken English, which I don't find to be. At least in my travels as someone that's been around a lot of non-native English speakers, I don't find that sort of broken English thing to be useful. I find talking slower to be the more important thing than ruining the way you speak English. Because the people that are speaking broken English have learned some English. So in a way they understand how English works. And so when you do that broken English thing, it's almost like it seems like they understand that you're speaking in a broken English. And it's just like at that point it's like now it's just offensive.
I agree, and you hit the nail on the head.
Am I wrong? Because I've been wrong pretty much all this episode earlier.
No, you're good. I would agree 100%. That's what I think a lot of people don't understand is when you are talking to someone whose English is at a lower level, speaking broken English doesn't actually usually help. It's generally the speed at which you're speaking. So yeah, slow it down. What's really funny is a lot of people, if you're talking to someone whose native language isn't English, whether you're traveling or whatever, people will, say you say something to them, they don't understand you, so they say what? People tend to say the same thing at the same speed and maybe say it louder, which it's usually, I understand where they're coming from in terms of thinking that it's a hearing issue. I get that. I don't think that's abnormal, but usually it's not a hearing issue, but it's a comprehension issue.
These are all very also like American thoughts to have, and listen,
I agree.
I try my hardest not to just make this a America bashing podcast because we're Americans, and it's easy sometimes. It's just easy, but I've noticed that because my mom has done that before too when we lived in Germany, and I think a lot of that just comes from it's an ignorance for sure, but the ignorance is just based off of like when an American hears someone say what. Usually the response is, well, obviously they know how to understand me. It's just that they can't hear me, so speak up. But that is sort of a short-sighted thought where it's like maybe use a different word. Think about what words you use.
Exactly.
Think about and that's why I also don't want to just bash Americans because this takes a lot of like additional thinking to your conversation. So it is like it's not just something that comes naturally. But I noticed that a lot when we studied abroad in Austria. I went to France for a week for a project that was related to our college, and it just happened that my classmates in America had to travel to France at the same time that I was. So I just took a 1-hour flight from Vienna to Paris. By the way, I still had to pay the same amount for the program as everyone else did, but my flight was an hour. Everyone else's was 8. Just saying. Just saying. And I talked to the teacher. I was like, hey. Anyway, this was years ago. And my parents paid for it. I should not be this bothered by this. But one of the phrases I heard the most from the French people were, "Ooh, you talk so fast." Not for me, but I think I've been in like situations where you're around people that don't. But like. I heard that all the time, and that's when I first realized it's like, I think that's when I even first started thinking, that broken English thing doesn't work because I've probably done that before too.
Oh,
but it's
I'm
like
sure
it's just we talk so fast.
Right, and I think a lot of Americans are not so great at enunciating their speech. They'll
me
mumble.
Neither. I'm not either, by the way.
Right, and I've been told by my colleagues that I speak very clear and people don't have too much difficulty understanding me, which really makes me glad to hear. But I think I've also, in regards to code switching, I have significantly changed the way I speak English after working as an English teacher. for these last few years.
Even when you speak to other native English speakers, you'd say?
Probably not as much, but I do think I probably speak a little bit more clearly now than I used to, even when I'm talking to my native speaker friends. But yeah, I wanted to go back though, Jared, to, you mentioned code switching culturally, and, you mentioned, being basically a representative for all black people when you were younger. And I'm sure you got it a lot in college as well. And I'll never forget.
A little less, but yeah. And that's why I knew that Red Hot Chili Peppers album so well, is a lot of that had to do with code switching.
Right.
Where it's like, oh, so no one else is going to listen to The Roots or Pharrell?
Oh,
okay.
I love The Roots. But yeah. But I think some of that also has to do with, we would listen to some of that together.
12?
No, I didn't. I did like NERD though.
Okay, I like them. Well, actually, I didn't like them when I was younger, but that's only, I don't know why. But anyway, that's besides the point. Yeah.
Right.
So what did you want to say on that?
Well, I wanted to mention that, I was incredibly ignorant about this. Obviously, I guess some of it's just because, I'm a white guy and I grew up in a fairly white town. But I'll never forget, I watched a comedy special by Dave Chappelle, and he said, you have the way you talk as a black person with your black friends and your family, and then he said you also have job interview English.
Yeah. Every black person can relate to that.
Right. And
hello. Well, nice to meet you.
Right. But what's funny about that though to me is that it's not, I guess maybe funny is the wrong adjective. It's just, in a way, it's kind of sad that, you have to conform so much. And sadly, I think it's because of a lot of negative stereotypes. You know what I mean?
Right.
If people hear and it's not even African Americans, I guess, or black people, it's slang in general. If I called up somebody for a prospective interview and I used a bunch of slang, they would probably also think negatively of me as well.
Well, that's why I think there's also like a line to it. But what I have noticed from life and from reading and all that stuff is that the expectations are so much higher for like people of any sort of like minority in the workplace. And what I mean by that is that like they're like, for example, black women are quicker to be called hard to work with or angry or temperamental, when a lot of those same qualities might be considered like a go-getter or a leader from a different person or something like that.
Right.
And there's a lot of that happens, and so you have to sort of tread lightly, because you also like have to, and even like I remember when my mom was when we were younger, me and my sister, my dad used to always joke that my mom had like her work voice, and like whenever she would take work calls at home, she'd be like talking to us. She'd be like, "Oh, someone's calling me." She'd be like, "Hello, Glenda." Oh, I don't want to say her. I'll put her last name on blast. But she'd be like, "Hello, Glenda," and she like have like it would be like this like abrupt change in her voice that we'd all notice immediately.
Right.
And like we joke about it, but there's like some serious in her brain, and I think in reality, like repercussions behind how she spoke and carried herself in front of everyone else.
And see, what's interesting about code switching, you talked about it as a crutch, right? But I also think code switching also shows a really high cultural sensitivity and adaptability, right? Because like if you're only talking about it on a foreign language level, it can definitely be a crutch. But if you also use it in a way that kind of lets you flow between language and cultures, like I have some friends that I would play soccer with a lot in East Lansing, and they were from Mexico, and they would code switch all the time, and they would be cracking up and laughing really hard, and probably because the English word just didn't do the trick, and the Spanish word always did. It's like anything when you learn a foreign language, or you grow up bilingually. I think you could associate the same words, like I don't know, like shoe and zapato, which is shoe in Spanish, right? And those two words might have different meanings for you, even though it literally is the same thing, but culturally, in whatever way, it has a different meaning. So I think that's a cool thing about code switching. And you're right. I think there are a lot of minorities who, I think we don't give minorities enough credit with how much they have to deal with in their daily lives with regards to code switching. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mentioned this on our Thanksgiving episode briefly when we were talking about Thanksgiving meals. Mm-hmm. It's that I don't think a lot of, and this goes for, and that's, I only focus on black because that's what I know, because that's what I am. Mm-hmm. But as you mentioned, you have Mexican friends that you've noticed that would do the sort of code switching as well. And any person that's sort of like, that's not like, has to adapt to some sort of culture that's not theirs. You'll see it, whatever that is, or some sort of place where their culture is not the main culture. You'll notice some sort of adoption of slang or just ways of acting or dress and all that stuff. And I forgot where I was going with that. Where did you just say before I went on that stupid tangent?
About how minorities have to really be aware and we don't give them enough credit?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. And I think, as I mentioned on that Thanksgiving episode, is that I don't think a lot of people that aren't minorities realize and that's why I think it's an American thing as a whole, but also it breaks down more culturally within America as well, where it's like we don't realize how much other people adapt to us.
Oh, and sure.
And so I think that fits in with cultures that come into America, us as Americans, regardless of your. Maybe people of other races might be able to notice it more, but in general, like Americans don't notice how much people of other cultures have to adapt to fit into America. And I think within America, it's the same thing within cultures where, like, white people don't realize that there is a quote unquote norm to being to the culture of when people hear American culture, there is a norm. That is generally, I guess, white culture you call it. I don't know. People have to that people within America have to adapt to and learn how to work around if they haven't grown up within that culture, but they want to get jobs that usually involve. I guess any minority works with people that are obviously most people aren't working in workplaces that are just all of them. So you have to learn how to adapt to that. And I don't think it's all a negative thing. And that's why I don't want to just full on say that it's a negative thing, because I think there is something to people learning to work with one another of different cultures. But usually, in general, when it comes to big businesses and corporate structures, you're adopting to, what the leaders, which are usually white people, expect of you.
Right.
And so it sort of is a short-sighted view of what is expected. And so I think there's just more learning have you heard of the term respectability politics by any chance?
No, what is that?
Whenever I think of code switching, my struggle with it personally is when does it become like respectability politics? And what that is like Bill Cosby, for example, used to always be like, the problem with the black community is that black dudes are sagging their pants and that they swear and that they listen to this goddamn I guess Bill Cosby wouldn't say goddamn, but they listen to this hippity hop music where they say all these filth flarmy terms. And it's like, yeah, Bill, you think we live impure lives because we swear? Yeah, okay. Anyway, but people would call that
can of worms.
People would call that sort of like, a bunch of people do it. Bill Cosby was just the first example that came to my head.
Yeah,
do that sort of. It's called respectability politics, where it's like you essentially say these people wouldn't be where they are if they essentially adapted to what other people expected of you, which is essentially saying falling in line with what society or white people expect of you. And there's this line that is that code switching could turn into that, but I also think code switching is a tool. I think it's a useful tool.
100%. I agree. The bad
I like
thing
that I know, or like random Red Hot Chili Peppers albums and songs.
Right. Well, I think the other interesting thing about code switching is that it's kind of a double-edged sword in a way, Because if you're not able to code switch and say you're a minority and you go in for a job interview and you can't do job interview speak, as Dave Chappelle calls it, you might not get the job, right?
Right.
Maybe not, because sadly there are a lot of negative stereotypes. And I think some of it is just blatant racism as well.
Yeah, for sure.
I really do not think you're uneducated if you're not a great code switcher. But on the other hand, if you're also an amazing code switcher, I hope this isn't offensive to you, Jared, but have you ever been teased by any like white people for you being like kind of a white black dude?
I fucking hate that.
Right?
I fucking hate
It's awful though, isn't it? Like,
yeah.
and it's
like I've had people be like, blah blah blah, who's some white person classmate's blacker than you, and I've also had people been like, I forgot that you were black and all that. Yeah, I've had all of that stuff.
That comes from such a place of ignorance.
I never forget.
Right.
I hate that, and it's so funny too because people think that they're complimenting you because
It's
they're
not a
saying
compliment.
you act white like us. It's like that person's blacker than you. It's like, why? Because his parents are shitty, or because he speaks terribly, or because he listens to rap. It's like, first of all, I listen to rap too. I just but it's just like those sort of it's just like breaking down. It's just But I was actually so funny. I was listening to Your Mom's House podcast.
Mm-hmm.
They just got a new studio, and they have a fart mic, which I showed you that clip of.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
And they played a clip on their podcast, and it was from Australia. And there was a TV show, and they were saying that there were two twins, and one twin was a black girl, and the other twin was a ginger white girl. Mm-hmm. And first, I don't know. I'm still not convinced that they're twins, but that's not the point of the clip. So they were talking about it so the woman that was presenting it was a woman and a man, and the woman was like, so these two girls are twins. One of them's a black girl. She's got dark curly hair and a dark complexion. The other one is a redheaded, fair complexioned girl. Good on her. And these two girls are twins. and so she's essentially like looking at you for being the white one of the two.
Oh,
and
that's so awful.
There was the dude that was the co-host had this look like he didn't say anything, but I have to like explain what he was saying. He was like, He had this face that when he looked at her, he's like, what?
Right.
Where he like looked over, he's like, well, hold on a second. But anyway, it was just like, it's just like stuff like that where I guarantee she didn't even notice what she said. However, I also guarantee that because she didn't notice what she said, a bunch of white people will be like, oh, she's not racist. She didn't even notice what she said. Where it's like, no, that's what racism is right there.
Right.
Not even noticing that you're saying some racist shit.
Right. And the funny thing is, I feel like a lot of people are really just ignorantly unaware of what's coming out of their mouth and the implications. And back to when people say, oh, well, so-and-so is blacker than you or whatever. The point I wanted to make was that it's not that they're blacker than anybody else. It's that you are so damn good at code switching that people don't even realize it. You know what I mean?
Usually my response to that nowadays is either if they say, they say that person's blacker than you, I say not to the cops. Or if someone says,
that's a good one.
Or if someone says, "Oh, I forgot that you were black," I said, "The cops haven't." Those are my two responses.
Right. Yeah. And sadly, it also reinforces a lot of stereotypes people have of people, people of color and minorities that like, oh, they can only act this way or talk that way, and the thing is.
And people think they're complimenting me too. That's just the hilarious part.
Oh, and
which I'm like, oh, thanks.
Right. Oh man, I just don't get why anybody would find that like. But I guess it's very very ignorant white people, and I don't think they're coming from a negative place or a place of contempt. I think they are trying to give you a compliment, but they're so unaware of the racist undertones of it.
We talked about that on some recent episode where it's like, and in situations like those, then you have to decide, is this worth me telling someone that they're racist? Because they don't because they don't realize that they are.
Right.
And two, then they're not gonna hear that was racist. They're gonna hear, oh, you're
You
a
are
racist or
racist,
something.
right.
Yeah.
And
it's like
then
now I gotta make them feel better.
Right.
Like,
Right.
no. And
Right.
it's like and then it just keeps going. That's how
Exactly.
this stuff keeps going. But let me can we relax a little bit? Let me back up a little bit.
Absolutely, sure.
I did not mean when I brought up all this code switchy work stuff. I thought this was going to be a lighthearted episode. I want to talk about how, for example, I swear less at work.
Sure.
I think that's code switching.
Yeah, sure.
I guess, but sometimes I'm shocked at people at work. One, the way they talk. Mm-hmm. Two, the way they dress, and then three, like the stories they'll tell about their personal lives to people at work. Like I have a coworker that she'll tell stories about like once she told the story about like her daughter that came home drunk one time, and then two she was telling the story about how she gets so mad. She meaning my coworker, the woman, gets so mad that she was like punching her wall at home.
Oh, jeez.
And I guess it's going to turn angry and racial again. But all I thought was, like, I would never get away with telling, like, I can never imagine, maybe I would get away with it, but I can never imagine getting away with this, telling these stories of drunkenness and rage like that in my private life.
Me either.
And it's just like, why are you so comfortable at, and that's why I want to say code switching's not all bad. I think there is something to the way you carry yourself around certain groups of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree 100%. And I think a lot of we're going to get back into race a little bit. I think a lot of white people don't understand the level of code switching that they should be doing, because I definitely, the way I dress, the way I carry myself, and the way I talk at school is a lot different than if I'm talking to my friends, if I'm talking to you. Even when I'm recording this podcast, I use different language than I would when I'm teaching, or at a more formal professional setting.
This is going to sound foolish, but for the longest time, longest time in my working career, like post college and all that stuff, I guess even during college when I had internships, I really was personally. I didn't care if other people did, but I was personally against doing like a casual Friday. I never, and I still kind of don't. It's a little different now though, because the area I work is like I work in like the plant, in an office in the plant, so everyone around me is more casual than when I worked at like the headquarters or whatever. But like, I really fought against casual Friday. It's like it seemed like I was like I don't need this. Just seems like, I don't know. It's just risk. It's just unnecessary risk that you're taking.
Also, didn't you and a couple of our other friends, didn't you also like wear a suit on like Fridays in college or something?
Oh, not on Fridays. No, Brad and I.
Whoa, watch yourself.
Speaking of code switching, my two whitest named friends.
That's pretty true.
Brad and I were actually talking a couple weeks ago about. Brad and I would wear suits when we had tests. Brad and I were talking a couple weeks ago about how his name is a real difficult name to have nowadays, and how visually he kind of fulfills that idea of a Brad. And I told him, I think the only name that's either comparable or worse is probably yours.
Yeah.
It's
worse. It's worse.
As far as like stereotypical white, like terrible white dude names.
Mm-hmm.
Chad and Brad are like the two of the top ones right now.
I mean, I'm not going to read it, but all of our listeners out there, if you're curious, just go on Urban Dictionary and look up Brad and Chad, and you will not see anything positive at all.
I haven't seen that, but I can only imagine.
Oh, it's really bad. It is really, really bad. But yeah, so it is what it is. But I think being aware of yourself and your surroundings definitely helps with code switching, including how white your name is as well.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But then there's the opposite, where other people are fighting how non-white their name is.
Right. Oh, for sure.
There's also in the black community, there's a joke of, or I guess any sort of non-white community, there's a joke of like seeing their name and putting it to the bottom of the pile or whatever.
Right.
And it's like some of that's like, yeah, I'm not racist. I'm just scared to have to pronounce this person's name. It's like, all right, well, I think that's close enough.
Right. Right.
Because there's still the same effect happening at the end of the day here.
Exactly. But yeah, I think though, on a lot of levels, in terms of language, code switching is great.
Yeah. And I also think by the way, I also think code switching, language-wise or cultural-wise, is fun sometimes.
Oh, absolutely.
Like I love sort of, like, sometimes I like going to situations where I feel like I'm out of my element a little bit and showing people it's like, oh no, I can hang.
Right. Oh, for sure. I feel like code switching is kind of like those extra herbs and spices that you're using to season your language, if you will, which I think is great. And as I mentioned earlier too, it's a really good way, I think, to like form a bond or start a kind of a cool friendship with somebody. Like I was talking to a friend of mine who also studies German. And I said, yeah, man, this place is really gemütlich. Because there's no English word that captures what gemütlich really is. Like, if you roughly translate it, it's like comfortable or cozy. But it's just not the same.
It's like chill. It's like laid back vibes.
But it's like all of these in one word.
Right. Yeah. It's its own word. Kind of like komisch also is kind of its own word. Like, it means like weird or crazy, but not like, not really. It's like it's kind of its own word.
Right. Also kind of awkward. Yeah.
I want to get your experience and or opinion on one more code switch, and it's the black scent. So not black people adopt or fitting into white cultures or white work environments.
White people trying to talk like they're black is what you're saying.
Yeah, white people trying to fit in with black people. White people trying to be cool or quote unquote cool around black people and thinking that they need to have the black scent or be like, "What's up, dog?" or "Yo, shit."
Right. I mean, I think it's tricky. I think I think it kind of depends on why you're doing it, right? Like for example, I have some friends who listen to a lot of rap music and
shout them out.
I'm not going to shout them out. They listen to a lot of rap music, and they I guess I've never heard the term black scent before, but I really like that. And they'll say like, or what? I'll even put myself on blast. I call my friends homie.
Right. But you don't specifically call the black ones homie, do you?
And that was thank you. That was my point. That was exactly my point. I think if you're using it like only because you think you have to use it with a certain group of people.
Right. Yeah, I would say, if you then call Brad pal or me and then me homie.
Right. I think that's a little weird. For sure. But I think if you're using it with everybody, I guess it's all right. I mean, I don't know, dude. It's hard for me to comment on this because I'm not black.
That's why I just wanted to get your opinion on how you, because I wonder and assume you've been around it.
I mean, and like occasionally I use it with my friends, but the friends I use it with are my white friends.
But I'm not talking about. See, that's the thing. I'm not even fully talking about. That's a thing in itself. We could talk about that, but I'm talking about. Because we're talking about code switching to fit into situations. That's what code switching is all about, is adapting to whatever situation you're in or whatever sort of language or cultural limitations or knowledge you have.
Right.
So I'm talking about fitting in with people because you think you have to adopt their culture for them to accept you.
I think I look at it this way. For example, if you are somebody who maybe grew up in the black community, but you're white or you're Latino or you're whatever.
Right.
And you use it, you probably use it all the time. Or majority of the time.
I get what you're saying.
And I think that's more genuine. But I think if it comes from like a I hang out with my white friends in the suburbs and then I go downtown Detroit and maybe I have a couple black friends there and then I completely change the way I speak. To me, it's just not. I guess to me it just doesn't seem as genuine. Like it seems like it comes from a weird place. You know what I mean?
No, I'm with you on that. Where I think at least what I would think is it seems like it's kind of patronizing almost.
Exactly.
Where it's like you think that because someone's different they can't, like, you have to adopt It just seems patronizing to me, where it's like you think that someone can't accept different cultures. Like, let me get down to your level so you'll accept me. Where it's like, how about you just be yourself? And,
exactly.
And it's like you don't think that just because this person's different, they know how to like you're assuming that other person doesn't know how to handle. And some of it, and I want to give some leeway because I can imagine sometimes it almost being like a defense mechanism that you don't recognize.
Mm-hmm. Could be.
But I would say this: recognize and don't do it.
Right. And I think there's also different tiers of it, right?
Right.
Like if you're using a couple slang words like that have become so common that like almost everybody uses them. Like most people know,
like homie.
Exactly. That was going to be even my parents know what homie means, and my parents are old white people, right?
For example. You're welcome to learn how to properly dap someone up. That's okay.
Right.
You're not appropriating the culture by properly shaking hands with a black person.
Right.
That's okay. That's one of my favorite things about. White people is the thought of, or white dudes mostly, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, it's all white dudes. I would say probably
is the fear that they probably have going in for a shake with a black person. That always brings a smile to my face.
Which is funny though, because I sometimes don't even know what to do, even with to
I don't
me,
even know what to do sometimes, bro.
Right, because a regular handshake to me seems like a formal business work kind of thing, right?
Right.
Now, if it's someone older than me, I don't care what race you are, I'm going to shake your hand if you're older. But if it's somebody our age, I never know. And to be honest with you, man, my default is either the kind of like the bro hug where you go in with one hand, and then hug. Honestly, dude, if it's a close friend of mine, I'll just hug him.
Yeah, me too.
Even if it's a guy, I don't care.
Me too. I'm a hugger too. But I'm with you though. That's always here's a pro tip here on the Untranslatable podcast. If you're nervous about going into a handshake with someone of any race, creed, nationality, that's not a formal. Start with the pre-bro hug sort of clasp.
Yep.
And then from there, just let Mother Nature and gravity take over, and it'll work itself out.
And I've had a lot of people, and I've had a lot of people in the Czech Republic not do the full bro hug, but do the hand clasp.
Yeah. That's kind of a European thing, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, that's
exactly. But yeah, I think though code switching, if you come from that culture, I would say it's a normal, healthy thing. But if you're code switching, like we've discussed, where trying to have a black accent when you're a white guy around black people. Even if you come with it, exactly. Even if you come with it with good intentions, it's totally cringy for sure, 100%.
Well, yeah. Even if you're coming with good intentions, even with the best of intentions, it shows a lack of awareness.
Right. Exactly. Absolutely.
And it shows it is a little insulting, where it's you can talk to me like a normal person.
Right. Exactly.
Which is kind of goes back to that talking where when it comes to code switching and talking to people that don't speak English and sort of I think it's similar to doing that thing where a native English speaker will start to speak with broken English, where it's a little insulting.
Right.
I think it's a similar concept.
Right. And I would say that's kind of code switching on an ignorant level or an unaware level, because if you usually it's not the complexity of the sentence generally, unless you are asking them something really sophisticated, exactly, in a sophisticated way. But generally speaking, I would say if you're asking, where is the restaurant, and they don't understand you, it's probably because you said it too fast or you mumbled. And then if you just go, where the restaurant, to me that's really patronizing and
where is restaurant?
Exactly.
It's you can the wasn't the hard part.
Exactly. So yeah. But we would also love to hear your opinions about code switching and how you use code switching, whether it's linguistically or culturally. Please send us a message, shoot us an email, untranslatablepodcast@gmail.com, or tweet at us, untranslatable1. on Twitter. We would love to hear the ways in which you use code switching to go about your daily lives, whether it's with different friend groups, in the workplace, or basically wherever.
I always get nervous when we get serious, but I think it was good.
Yeah. Oh, I agree.
I'm self-conscious now. Like I was like, oh, that wasn't funny. That was just serious. And
Hey, sometimes you can't. Life isn't always sunshine and rainbows. Sometimes you
true.
got to get serious.
that's true.
But to get a little fun in our lives, I think music is a great way to do that. And I gotta say, Jared, you have picked a slammin' tune for this episode. Tell us a little bit about it.
Oh, speaking of funny, this guy, the story behind the song is not funny at all. So the guy's name is Fela Kuti. He's from a city called Abeokuta, Nigeria. He's Nigerian. Let's just say he's from Nigeria. And he was born in, I believe, like the 30s, and he died in the 90s of AIDS, if I'm not mistaken. That's a bold thing to put out there and then say, if I'm not mistaken, isn't it, huh?
That's true.
I believe it is. I remember reading it before, but then I was like, well, but anyway, I'll confirm that. But see, now I want to. Can you confirm that for me while I'm talking?
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
So this song is Zombie, and so Fela Kuti is a multi-talented musician. He essentially, I mean, I guess you'd even call him a composer because he just does. From the sense I got from reading about him, it seems like, especially like if he were to be, say, putting together an album or something, it seems like he would do it all and just put it together.
Yep, he died of complications related to AIDS.
Okay, whew, jeez. Just like that's kind of like when you like it just reminds me of when I like made accuse someone of like sexually assaulting someone of being like, God, I hope that's true. Now that I just threw that out there. Anyway, yeah, okay. Anyway, so yeah, he seemed just like he played a bunch of instruments, so it's not even worth me just going through him because he was just a very multi-talented musician, but he was also a very outspoken activist using and it showed through a lot of his music. And this album, the album was called Zombie, but this the title song is what they call it.
Yeah, or the single.
Okay, the single, which is also called Zombie, was very popular, and it was a very powerful. It's considered one of the most powerful sort of anti-government, anti-military songs in ever. Interesting note. Speaking of speaking of getting racial again, I remember we did an episode. We did an episode a while ago. The song of the pod was by an Irish band called the Cranberries.
Yes,
and they had a very powerful anti-government. Or like not anti-government, excuse me, but it was like an anti-violence, anti-IRA
I think
song,
so. Yeah.
also called Zombie. I wonder where they got that idea from.
Do you think they got it from Fela Kuti?
What do you think? This is just all
I don't
conjecture.
know. Maybe.
I mean, this Fela Kuti's version came out first.
Right.
It's an anti-government, anti-military, anti-violence called Zombie.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Is that a coincidence? Is that a coincidence?
Maybe not. That's a good point.
I find it hard to believe that would be a coincidence. I want to read some of these lyrics because it is very powerful. And so the repeating word is obviously zombie. So he says zombie, oh zombie during sort of the chorus, I assume you'd call it. And then so here's the first verse. Zombie, no go unless you tell him to go. Zombie, and zombie represents zombie is the military people that are doing all this senseless killing. Zombie, no go stop unless you tell him to go. Tell him to stop. Zombie, no go turn unless you tell him to turn. Zombie, no go think unless you tell him to think. Essentially saying they just do whatever they're told to do blindly. Right. Unless you tell them to go. Okay, so more of that. Tell them to go straight. Ajado. I wish I would have looked up what that meant. Oh, wait, I wonder if I click on it. Genius is amazing.
Oh, I love Genius.
Damn. Means left, right. Genius. Shout out to Genius.
Right. Nice.
It highlights certain words and you can click on them and explains what those specific little words mean. So it means left, right. So it's just saying, their commands to go forward. Tell them to go kill. No break, no job, no sense. Tell them to go quench. No break, no job, no sense. And it's just more repetition similar to that. and it's beautifully composed musically.
Oh, absolutely.
A lot of very familiar African beats that you would recognize, but it's also sort of got a electronic, not heavily, but it is composed electronically too.
Really, I didn't know that. Okay,
it sounds like it is, doesn't it?
Not back then. How would they have composed it electronically?
Listening to it right now? I mean, I don't know when it came out. There's
76.
I guess. Yeah,
76.
there's still some electronic things you could do to it. I mean, they're not like using GarageBand, I assume, but
Right.
you can add effects and stuff in the 70s.
That's true.
I only listened to it once or twice, so you tell me. You're listening to it now, I assume. So maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I guess the vibe I get from it is nothing close to electronic because of all the horns.
Okay, all right, my bad.
But it could be,
So this is according to Wikipedia, so take it with a grain of salt. But apparently this led to this song and album led to the murder of some of his family members. And the album was a scathing attack on Nigerian soldiers, using the zombie metaphor, as I mentioned. And Kuti and his band then took... let me... see, I'm far away from you. So they burned down his city, and Kuti was severely beaten, and his elderly mother was thrown from a window, causing fatal injuries.
Ugh, that's awful.
After that album came out. And so Kuti's response to the attack was to deliver his mother's coffin to the main army's barracks in Lagos and write 2 songs, Coffin for Head of State and Unknown Soldier. So, I mean, Fela Kuti he's
the man.
Fela Kuti, excuse me, I said Feta. Fela Kuti plays no games.
Nope.
And so he's an activist through and through, and it's cool to me to see activism so strongly connected to his music like that, and that he's using it to and it's just cool to see like how successfully his word was spread because he's an amazing musician. But he's like, I'm an amazing musician, and I'm using this to let people know about the atrocities that are happening in my country, in my area.
Right.
That's awesome.
Oh yeah, and art transcends, and music as well. Cross culturally. I mean, in a way, music can also be viewed kind of as a code switching. I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I mean, he has a lot of. He and other musicians that do this, like the Cranberries, have a lot of feelings and have a lot of emotion and a lot of a lot of anger, and it's I think is useful not only for the people listening to it, but for that person to have a way to channel that. Like it's a therapeutic, it's cathartic.
Right. It's a great song though. Check it out, everybody. Yeah, the story is incredibly compelling. And also terrible what the Nigerian army did to him and his family. But his music lives on, and it's amazing.
Yeah, and it showed that he was about that life. They beat him up and killed his mother, and he took that as just more motivation to keep going and funnel that into his art.
Exactly.
I don't want to say it's awesome because it's a terrible thing that happened, but it's a hard thing to do. And it's inspirational. Let's put it that way.
Exactly. All right, Jared. Well, now it's time for some jokes. I have some actual puns that are out there for our code switching able listeners out there. So this first one goes out to our English speakers and our Dutch speakers, also our German speakers, because this word works in Dutch and in German. So sadly, this I'm not going to need your involvement too much, Jared, just your reaction, because this one is not a question. But here we go.
Wie born.
2 fish are swimming in the sea. One is from Holland and the other is from England. Then the English fish sees the Dutch fish, waves his fin, and says, "Hi." The Dutch fish panics and says, "Where? Where?" Can you explain the joke?
Like a jellyfish or a shark or something?
It's a shark.
Oh, okay.
A high or high fish in German is the word for shark.
Oh, okay. That's a good one. I like that.
So that one our code switchers out there can get. This one, Jared, you will probably understand if I pronounce the word correctly, because it's, well, you understood the last one. But this one is French. So, Jared, why do French people prefer to have small breakfasts?
Small breakfast. Petit déjeuner.
It's because one egg is un œuf.
Un œuf.
Isn't that how you say one egg?
Yeah, but
Un œuf?
why would that have? What does that have to do with them preferring a small breakfast?
Because one egg is enough.
Un œuf. Oh,
You get it? You see it?
there we go. There we go. Took a minute.
Exactly. All right, and this last one works in 5 different languages. So I'm going to attempt to read them in all 5. We'll see if I can do it. So the English, where do cats go when they die? They go to purgatory.
Oh no.
¿De dónde van los gatos cuando mueren? Purgatorio. That was Spanish. Portuguese, we'll see if I can pronounce this. Para onde os gatos vão quando morem? Para o purgatorio. Italian, dove vanno I gatti quando muoiono?
Many fregista.
Nel purgatorio. And in French, I should really... Here, can I send this one to you and can you read this? Because my French is trash. I'm going to send this to you on Facebook really quick, Jared. And you can read the last one in French. So, see, there we go, Jared.
My Facebook is trash as well, by the way.
I can
we're clear.
involve you. I mean, it's better than mine, though.
Yeah, at this point, I'd prefer if you didn't involve me.
Well, too late.
Not the sort of involvement I was looking for, but thank you.
All right.
I'm
So I'll
ready
send it
whenever
to you.
are.
So just for our listeners out there, the joke was, where do cats go when they die? They go to purgatory because cats purr.
Où vont les chats quand ils meurent au purgatoire?
Beautiful, very, very nice. Yeah, I would not have. I would not have been able to say that. But I think that's a really clever joke, and it's really cool
Purgatoire.
Right. I think that's really cool though that this joke works in all these different languages.
How do you say purgatory in German?
You got me on that one,
Mr. Walking Dictionary.
I'm not sure how you say purgatory in German. Now I'm curious. I'll look it up real quick.
I'm gonna get it first.
Are you now? We'll see. Well, I'm typing with one arm, so you probably will.
Me too. I'm typing with one hand as well.
Purgatorium.
Oh yeah. Or what's Fegafeuer? Is that like before fire or something?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, so you could also, so that would work in German if you say Purgatorium. Wo gehen die Katzen, wenn sie sterben? Sie gehen zum Purgatorium. So there you go, 6 languages. And it probably works in more. Parada. All right, well, Jared.
Purgatoire. Too bad I can't do the rolling of the R's.
Right. Well, Jared, my Czech word of the pod today is nothing too special. It is the word for language.
Come on. We talked about this. Don't downplay your stuff.
That's fair. The word is jazyk, which means language. Because I thought code switching is a great way to kind of bounce in between languages. And
you betcha.
And speaking of languages, my quote of the pod today is one I decided, you know what? I'm going to write one myself today. So I tried to figure. I tried to figure since I couldn't bring you any original jokes. I figured time to bring an original quote. And so here we go. Code switching shows the ability to transcend cultures, languages, socioeconomic statuses, and much, much more in the blink of an eye.
Yeah, that's very true, and that's what we talked about is how quickly you can code switch and how quickly I think one can adapt to a situation even if they feel like they're out of place.
Exactly, and I think that's the amazing thing about. Thank you.
Hey.
Parada. Thank you, sir.
Hey.
And so I think in the future I might try to come up with other quotes if I couldn't find any good ones. So I figured, you know what? If nobody else can do it, only person that's going to do it right is yourself, right? Exactly. So we hope you've enjoyed this episode about code switching. It's really an amazing thing that I think we can do with languages, with cultures. And I think for the most part, code switching is a very positive thing. As with anything in life, there are always some negative aspects as well. But I think being able to kind of fluidly move and transcend between languages and cultures can be a really beautiful and amazing thing. So we hope you've enjoyed this episode and learned something new about code switching and become hopefully a little bit more aware as well of times when maybe code switching isn't always appropriate. So please be aware of those.
Slipping on gator piss.
That's exactly the last thing you want to be doing. So as usual, please drop us a line on Twitter, Untranslatable1. You can slide into Jared's DMs. That's one of his favorite things, to wake up in the morning and check our Twitter and see who's been sliding into them DMs. Check out our poppin' Instagram, Untranslatable Podcast. We have all sorts of different clips and things up there. And shoot us an email of your own experiences with code switching or your own untranslatables at untranslatablepodcast@gmail.com. We thank you so much for all of your support. We've been enjoying this, and we hope you're enjoying this as much as we are. And we will talk to you next time. And here at the Untranslatable Podcast, we would like to say, Děkujeme.